Hello. Today is Monday, August 4. Welcome to episode 484 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson. I'm joined today by NSI Senior Fellows Matt Hayden and Bishop Garrison and fellow Jessica Jones, back from a lengthy tour of the entire globe. Jones, welcome back. We have a spicy episode today, folks. A very spicy episode. We're talking about the interface between the legislative branch and the executive branch. We're talking about constitutional responsibilities, which means, of course, the Senate failing to confirm President Trump's nominees for a number of positions, over 20 ambassadorships, a number of other key positions, including councils, which Matt is going to talk about. And the question is this impacting U.S. foreign policy and national security? So effectively, what folks need to know a little bit is under Senate procedures, the Democrats have been forcing the Senate, because they have more than 40 votes, they can do this, and they can stop cloture, which means ending the filibuster. They can slow down the nomination process to it where it's basically one a day, which means it's a very slow process. And a lot of positions have been unfilled because Democrats have been choosing, as is their right to do, to make the process take as long as possible. That means right now, with Congress having just gone out of session for the August recess, with 4 to 5 weeks of inactivity coming, there are a bunch of nominees of the president for, frankly, important posts. Not every single one of them is hugely important, but some of them are important. Ambassador to the UN, ambassadorships to a bunch of European countries, significant countries in Latin America that we care about, where the battle with China is real, do not have ambassadors. So question is, what do we think of this situation? Matt, I want to go to you first. Kind of talk about, if you will, your views of these ambassadorships, perhaps other positions that have not been filled because of this disagreement between the president and the Senate writ large. Is it impacting things on the ground?
Well, I had to dress like a senator today so we could have this conversation because they're taking their job very seriously. So the challenge you have is there's about 150, minus the 10, we're probably closer to 140 now, of individuals that have been cleared through committee out ready for a floor vote. And so we're looking at things where you're effectively looking for that procedural vote that's likely to be on partisan lines, individuals getting cleared by the Senate. The challenge is, without these individuals in place, there is a stagnation for the agencies, offices, and areas in which they will potentially hold. And those offices are waiting for political leadership because, especially in this climate, this environment, they know it's a do not break glass moment until you have political leadership that is directly tied to the president that gives you permission to do anything, which is appropriate and currently pausing a lot of activity. We look at things, ambassadors out there maintaining relationships. You look at general counsels that have to really take on some of this aggressive, they're looking at regulatory reform, and you're not going to get a rulemaking process through without general counsel. You're also talking about subject matter agencies like CISA with Sean Planky, who, there's a global engagement from a CISA perspective on standards for critical infrastructure, especially in this time right now. We're trying to really get measures up from a cyber perspective. There's a lot of important roles that are sitting on the bench, and they are going to clear the Senate. It's just a matter of when. And I know we joke about this, but it's almost better from my perspective if they want the oversight just to get them in place because they're going to get through, and just torture them with the Senate's oversight procedures as opposed to just delaying them through the month of August. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy a good August vacation too, but it would have been nice to see these people get through.
Bishop, what do you think? Is it better to have these folks, which I think Matt's right, pretty much all of them are going to be approved at some point by the Senate. It's just going to take some time. Would it be better to have them in office now, or should we wait for this process to play out?
I think you need to wait for the process to play out. Listen, let's remind everyone that we have a Republican-controlled Senate and House to that point. So with a Republican president, so they can come together and find a way to push these nominations through if they want to. I will give at least some kudos to the House and Senate, or particularly Senate, but the House and Senate leadership together said, there won't be any recess appointments. And I think that is a very important piece of the process that needs to be protected, because you don't want to see a bunch of these nominees without a full and open public confirmation process be pushed through by the president, and then ultimately, like who are they responsible to, and how are they going to basically perform whenever they are brought in for some type of Senate oversight. To that point, this is not a new process. If you look back to 2015, you can see language from then a freshman senator named Tom Cotton that was attacking some of the nominees from President Obama and looking for opportunities and ways to leverage this exact type of tactic in order to ultimately get whatever it was they wanted on the back end. This is not new. It happened with President Trump before. It happened with President Biden before. So we shouldn't act like we should be surprised at any of these tactics. I think at the end of the day, what we want to see, what the nation should want to see as people, are clear, fair confirmation processes to have that ability. And if we have to wait an additional 5 weeks to do that, it's not going to hurt anything. Listen, you already have a White House that is controlling most of our policies and processes in national security and foreign policy directly from the executive. With a very thinned out National Security Council and further leadership throughout the national security apparatus. So having someone as the ambassador to Lithuania is not going to make or break our diplomacy overnight with that country. So just let the process play out.
All right, I'm gonna push back a little bit, Bishop.
So I'm
yes,
sure.
yes, I am. So I think what I'm hearing you say is when there's a partisan disagreement over nominees, a long delay in approving ambassadorships
No, I'm not. Nope, you're putting words in my mouth. You're putting
undermine.
words in my mouth. I said we have seen this play out before. We know that it's a tactic that exists. I don't support it, but I also don't support blowing the process up in order for the president at the end of the day, whether he or she is Republican or a Democrat, to get what they ultimately want. What we should be rooting for is both transparency and comedy within our legislative process. That's what I'm saying.
And just on the recess appointment side,
maybe this fault line isn't as big as I thought.
Go ahead, on the recess appointment side, for the nominees, that's not good either. So if you're a nominee that comes through and goes through the vetting, does the FBI paperwork, gives every financial disclosure form you can, and then you get a recess appointment, you're even more temporary than a political appointment is in the past, and you've made the Senate mad at you. And so there's not a good spot for a recess appointee other than just some quick political action. So that's not a happy place either.
Okay, Jones, you've been seeing things outside our country.
The nomination process on vacation closely.
Yeah, you've been outside the bubble, outside the swamp. What you've come back to this
back to the swamp.
Something that I guess has happened before. What are your thoughts about this current snafu we have?
You saw some lovely, I think you call them nasty grams from the president, and a bit of words between him and Senator Schumer. And I'm interested in really where the anger comes from when it comes to the Trump administration. Is he really worried that his national security and foreign policy, it's not going to be executed, or is it really it's a showdown with Congress and he wants to make sure he gets his way, right? Bishop talked about Congress using its leverage over the appointment process, and what the news had focused on was a potential deal, right? That's what was in the headlines. We were going to have a two-stage deal. Some nominees were going to come through, 20 to 30 now, and then more later after the recess. And it was actually President Trump that blocked it, right? He is the one that said no to congressional leadership, and it didn't go forward. And if these are really critical appointments, really what was the thought process there is that he didn't want to hand over power back to the Senate, right? So I think it's interesting, where does that anger come from? We've talked about, President Trump is kind of a one-man diplomacy show. He's calling the shots, as he should. He's the president, but, even his own Secretary of State sometimes looks out of the loop. The NSC has been, cut down in size, state as well. And so we've got Wickoff still traveling around. It's hard to do that and then also argue these ambassadors are critical to the functioning of the American system, when he himself is at times, not as focused much on relationship building and the alliance system that we've talked a lot about here. And so I think September is going to be really interesting. I think the news, today and yesterday was that the Big Four are going to meet and talk about kind of this stalemate and on the Hill and what they're going to do when they come back. So I agree. You know, most of these folks are going to move through the process. It's just a matter of time and whether Senate Democrats can pick up some deals along the way potentially. So I think we'll all return from when we get not Matt shirt. If you guys aren't watching, Matt is wearing a very colorful vacation shirt. Once he goes back into suit Matt, whether or not we see any change.
Also, the eyewear is
The
notable.
eyewear, yes.
All right, I'm going to opine a little bit here. I think under different circumstances or in the past, we might say democracy was being undermined and our institutions were being degraded by this kind of behavior. That was baloney then. It's baloney now. This is a pure political power play. I'm not super impressed by any of the arguments for the delay. These folks are going to be in their jobs anyway. They've already been scrutinized. They ought to be approved. If we actually care about diplomacy and having ambassadors and that kind of thing, and the kind of normal way of doing business and building alliances and doing the little things right, let's go ahead and approve these people. I don't know why we're holding them up over little ticky-tack things. I don't like it when one side does it. I don't like it when the current minority is doing it. It doesn't even really matter who the president is. If the person's gone through the necessary scrutiny of all of the things that they have to show to prove that they're qualified and have lived the right kind of life to have these jobs, and now it's just a political question, I'm never really impressed by the arguments. I'm not impressed by them now. So I guess we'll leave it at that. And I think there's perhaps more common ground here than we thought earlier. I thought
Less
we were
is
going to have
not
a big fault
impressed
line,
is the
but
theme of the week.
I'm not impressed.
He's never impressed.
That's not true. That's not true. There've been things, Matt's shirt.
Oh, there you go. Boom.
Bishop, your good humor in a difficult spot. Jones returning to action with a kind of on fire. This was good.
Wow, I
All
stand
right.
corrected.
Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks always to Taylor Lane, Kelly Crowley, Claude Jennings, the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us on Wednesday, August 6th for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. We are now on YouTube. Check out our channel for a video of today's episode, some sartorial splendor. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.